Welcome to Wallace on Wire. Today we're talking about Anwar's trade policy commitments and, well, why one prominent politician believes we are essentially giving away the country's riches. We're focusing on some really strong comments from Hassan Karim, the Member of Parliament for Pasir Gudang, about a reciprocal trade agreement with the United States.
Yeah, his condemnation was pretty stark, wasn't it? He framed it as the government almost surrendering economic control.
Exactly. And the big headline figure that caught everyone's eye.
Oh, the RM 1 trillion, absolutely. He claims this reciprocal agreement involves commitments up to that amount. He actually described it in Parliament as handing over national wealth to the U.S.
1 trillion ringgit. That's a staggering number. We need to unpack that a bit. Is he talking about like direct cash or potential value?
Well, it seems he's framing it more as a loss of control, particularly over national resources and maybe future revenue. The idea is that the value the U.S. potentially extracts could reach that kind of scale. But, we should remember it is described as a reciprocal agreement. So theoretically, there are benefits for Malaysia too, things like lower tariffs, investment protection, smoother trade.
But his argument is that whatever benefits there are, they're massively outweighed by what Malaysia is giving up.
That seems to be the core of it, yes. Especially when it comes to certain strategic resources.
Okay, let's dig into that accusation, this idea of surrendering national wealth. He used some powerful historical points, didn't he?
He did. He drew parallels, quite stark ones actually, to the colonial era, reminding people that the nation fought for hundreds of years against powers like the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British to defend sovereignty and resources.
And his point now is?
His point seems to be that after all that struggle for independence, we're now potentially giving up economic control voluntarily through negotiation, not through force, but through agreements.
And he tied this specifically to welcoming the current U.S. President, Trump.
Yes, he made that link very explicit. He questioned welcoming President Trump, who he personally blames for issues elsewhere, like in Gaza with the Palestinian territory, and then in the same breath, signing deals that he sees as handing over national wealth. So it's not just an economic critique for him, it's political and moral, too.
Right. So the scale, the RM 1 trillion, is central. He contrasted that with the hard work done by the tax authorities.
Exactly. He highlighted that this commitment, this potential loss, rivals the kind of money the country works hard to collect through the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, that's the Inland Revenue Board, and also duties collected by the Royal Malaysian Customs Department.
So a huge amount of effort goes into collecting revenue, and he sees a similar value potentially being conceded through this deal.
That's the essence of his frustration, yes. It's about sovereignty being compromised, not with bombs or guns this time, but in his view, through a negotiation process he called, well, shameful.
Shameful. Strong word. What were the specific terms of the agreement that really angered him? Was there one key issue?
Yes, there was. The most specific point, the one that really stands out, involves rare earth minerals. He openly questioned how the U.S. negotiators managed to include a condition demanding that Malaysia sell its local rare earth resources to them.
Rare earths. Okay, that's significant. These aren't just any minerals, are they? They're critical for modern tech.
Absolutely critical. For everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced defense systems, control over rare earth supply chains is a major, major point of global geopolitical tension, especially between the U.S. and China.
So agreeing to sell them preferentially to the U.S., that has huge implications.
Potentially, yes. It could impact future domestic industries, processing capabilities, and essentially give up leverage over a resource that's becoming, increasingly vital for 21st century economies.
And his criticism wasn't just general. He pointed fingers at the negotiators.
He did. He specifically questioned the role of the Minister of Investment, Trade, and Industry in those talks. He asked why someone wasn't there to block that specific demand concerning such a strategic national resource. He seemed to find that failure, as he sees it, particularly compromising for the nation.
So the argument is that President Trump comes here and through negotiation, not force, secures access to vital resources.
That's the narrative he presented. That despite being, polite and cultured in diplomacy, Malaysia ended up losing out economically and strategically. It definitely raises questions about transparency in these high-stakes talks.
Okay, so if the argument is that this trade deal represents a potential RM 1 trillion loss or mismanagement, the natural next question is how do you make up for that? How do you strengthen the nation's finances generally?
Right, and that leads directly to the second part of Hassan Karim's argument in Parliament. He didn't just criticize, he offered a solution,
Which was?
a domestic one. He proposed imposing a wealth tax, or he also used the term capital tax, specifically on Malaysia's millionaires.
Interesting. So shifting the focus entirely from foreign deals to domestic tax policy, how did he define millionaire in this context?
He was quite specific. He defined it as someone with net assets of at least 1 million US dollars, which, he noted, translates to roughly RM 4.2 million locally.
And he framed this tax not just as practical, but as ethical.
Yes, very much so. He tied it directly to a statement made previously by the Prime Minister. He recalled the Prime Minister saying that taxing the poor is immoral or unethical. So Hassan Karim's argument is, well, if that's the case, then now is the right time to tax this defined group of wealthy individuals instead.
That's a clever political link. Now, wealth tax, capital tax. Sometimes those terms get used loosely. Is he talking about taxing total net worth annually or something else?
That's a good question. He used both terms. Generally, a wealth tax implies an annual levy on total net assets, property, shares, cash, everything above a certain threshold. A capital tax can sometimes mean taxes on business assets or capital gains. Given he used both, it suggests he's aiming for something comprehensive, targeting the accumulated wealth of the richest, not just their income or profits from selling assets.
Okay, but for such a tax to be viable, you need enough people who actually meet that RM 4.2 million threshold. Did he provide any numbers?
He did, and this is where his argument gains some statistical weight. He cited data from 2022. Back then, Malaysia apparently had 85,126 individuals meeting that millionaire definition.
85,000. Okay, that's a base. But is it growing?
That's the crucial part. The projection he used suggests that number is expected to nearly double, reaching something like 164,839 millionaires by the year 2027.
Wow, nearly doubling in just 5 years. That's a significant increase in potential taxpayers at that level.
Exactly. That projection really strengthens his case. It suggests there's a substantial and rapidly growing pool of wealth that could be tapped for state revenue. It shifts the argument towards practical fiscal policy, saying the money is there, it's growing, and taxing it could reduce the burden on lower income groups.
Of course, implementing such a tax would have its own challenges, right? Valuing assets, preventing capital flight.
Oh, absolutely. Implementation is always the tricky part with wealth taxes, but the proposal itself puts the idea squarely on the table, backed by those growth figures.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit. Hassan Karim's really strong condemnation of this U.S. trade deal, focusing on that huge RM 1 trillion figure, and the very specific issue of rare earth minerals.
Yeah, framing it as a potential surrender of national wealth and strategic resources.
And then his proposed solution, looking inward and imposing a wealth or capital tax on Malaysia's growing millionaire population, backed by data projecting significant growth in that group.
Right, so the core tension presented here, for you, the listener, to consider, is this balance. How does a government handle these big international trade deals, especially reciprocal ones involving strategic assets, versus the perception of losing national wealth?
And if those deals are seen as compromising, is a domestic solution like a targeted wealth tax the right way to sort of rebalance the books and focus on national priorities?
That's the question he seems to be forcing onto the agenda. Where should the priority lie, especially when ethical arguments about taxing the rich versus the poor are brought into play?
We definitely want to know what you think about this. Given these strong claims about losing national wealth and critical resources through trade, do you think a wealth tax is the necessary next step for Malaysia? Let us know your thoughts below. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for joining us on Wawa Sandwire.